everyone, this is Iman. From reporting on culture in Afghanistan and training journalists in Egypt while managing a radio station in Pakistan, Sundar Rashid's journey was anything but conventional. Today, we have her here, and currently she is serving as the head of careers and university guidance at Karachi Grammar School. If you talk about her experience, then she has a diverse range of experience from media to education to mentorship. And I believe that she not only guides students when it comes to their academic success, she also provides them a vision and a path that they can follow and become the best version of themselves. So Sundar, my first question to you would be, how did you do it all?
How did I do it all? I think I also just let life happen to me.
Yeah.
I knew that I was passionate about telling stories,
Yeah.
and one thing led to another.
Yeah.
And while I started out in radio, and that involves a lot of element of course, storytelling
Yeah.
and finding new stories to tell.
Yeah.
And honestly, the shift to education, it just happened. There was a time when I was working both in radio and at KGS full time. I don't know how I was doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
But I was.
Yeah.
And then eventually I realized that education was the way to go for me. It was more fulfilling.
Okay.
But I think in every career that I've had, I have created opportunities for myself to do new things. And I've been lucky enough to have the kind of mentors and bosses at all my jobs who have encouraged it. Like, oh, why don't we try doing this on radio, or why don't we try doing this in school? So yeah, a lot of it has been just carving out opportunities.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. And you mentioned that you have had mentors. In Pakistan, there is no such concept as having a mentor as such. And we at Denko, we believe that, it's really important to have that guidance. So you having that diverse kind of experience, how do you think that your profile has, maybe shaped the way you guide students today?
I think that what we seek out in a mentor is experience. They have answers to questions that we haven't even thought of yet.
Yeah.
Right? Their perspective is so much different from ours. And I think as I have sought mentorship throughout my career, and I've lived in different places, done different things, it all feeds into it. When a student is asking you for advice on, should I be studying in so and so part of the world?
Yeah.
I'm like, but do you even like that kind of food?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think you'll be able to manage the public transport in that city?
Yeah.
And I think it's so much more than just about knowing what is the application process like, but finding the social, cultural, emotional fit
Exactly.
between a student and the place where they are headed.
Yeah, it's really important.
So the more experienced mentors, counselors, and advisors are, I think the more robust guidance we're able to give them.
That is true, and that was actually my next question to you. I was going to ask you that, while you're counseling a student, do you also tell them about the cultural limitations and the cultural shocks that they might experience if, let's say, they're going to the US, the UK, or literally any part of the world?
Oh, absolutely. I think whether they choose an urban campus or they choose, like a small town in the Midwest, all those things really count. For somebody who's coming from Karachi to now having to, live through a Vermont winter is going to be, it's going to be jarring. It's going to be difficult. Those are things to find, if that is your dream school. But when you're going there, you should be prepared for what you're getting into, because the weather also affects us emotionally.
True.
If you're going to be upset and, physically it's going to take a toll on you. Those are things to think about.
Yeah, and it's also backed by research that the weather, it does have an impact on you and how you behave. And obviously it's, in some way it's going to have an impact on your studies as well, on your grades as well.
Absolutely.
So that is really important. Sundar, I also wanted to ask you that most of the KGS students, they eventually, they are targeting either an Ivy League university or let's say Oxford University in the UK. So what is the first step that they need to take to ensure that they get enrolled in such a university?
So at KGS we have a very diverse group of students, and I know that is not the perception, but we have students applying all over the world, and yes, the Ivies and Oxbridge are important to us, but we try to find what is the best fit for a student. And this might seem really like boring, but honestly, if you're looking at top tier universities, you have to make sure that your academics are in place. You need those A stars, you need those, I mean, that is your foot into the door.
Exactly.
Everything else comes later. So when that admissions officer is looking at, the first filter, that is grades.
Yeah.
So your grades have to be top notch, and then you need to supplement it with super curriculars. It is no longer enough to just have extracurriculars or co-curriculars. Increasingly, universities are looking for specialists as opposed to generalists. So we try to make sure that we provide opportunities for students to create a portfolio that is academically strong. They have super curriculars, they have community service, and most importantly, that they are good, responsible citizens.
No, I completely agree to that. I mean, and I feel like because of the work that you are doing and counselors like you are doing in the region, I can see that the trend is kind of shifting a bit, in a sense that students are actually doing internships, volunteer work, community service, because I was just interviewing some students for the Denko Career Boost that we are having, and I could see in their resume that at such a young age of 17, they have done so much. Like so much, and I was actually impressed. And I mean, I won't be ashamed to say that they have actually done better than me.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
Like where if I were to, look back to the age of 17, I wasn't that professionally equipped, where as compared to students who are doing what they're doing right now. But my question to you would be that, let's say if a student has good grades, all A stars, but has there been any instances where they weren't able to score an admission in the top tier university?
Yes, that happens. That happens because, I think the one limiting factor that most Pakistani applicants have when they're applying abroad is that we apply for a very limited type of course. Our culture is still focused on creating engineers and doctors and lawyers and and those fields are getting increasingly competitive, right? More and more people from around the world are now applying for the same number of spots.
Exactly.
So while students from Pakistan may have gotten through the grades wala filter, but then what next? Did they do those extra courses? Did they apply their knowledge to the community? The one thing I think that universities are looking for is, particularly in North America, is what have you done for the community? So say if your specialization is in environmental engineering, did you come up for a solution to deal with the waste in your school? And I think that's where we sort of need to push up our students' profiles, where it's like, okay, now think laterally. It's not just about I got the grades, I did the Olympiads, I won the inter-school science competitions, but where is the application? So that I think is something we need to work on.
So I wanted to ask that how do you balance students' ambitions with realism when it comes to applying to top tier university?
Just by breaking their hearts a little bit. Sometimes, as somebody who's a counselor, and I'm sure you agree, I would rather they hear it from me than have to face it in real life. Right? I think it is not just our job, but it is our duty, our moral duty, to make children aware of what is possible and what is not. And it's not just about whether your grades will get you there. Each student comes with a family background, with a cultural background that must be balanced against what they think they want. Because let's face it, they're also 16, 17, 18, and right now they think they want all of this. And then, of course, there's the biggest stakeholders in the whole process, the parents.
The parents, exactly.
Right? Is this the first child they're sending abroad? How many other siblings are there?
Exactly. I know.
Balancing finances over the next 4 to 5 years. So all of those things. they need to be balanced, and I think as counselors and advisors, that's our primary job, to give them realistic advice.
Exactly.
Right? It's like, okay, if this is your dream school, go ahead and apply, but I don't think this will be the best opportunity for you.
Yeah.
So just we just have to be brutally honest.
No, I think I would completely agree, because studying abroad is expensive, and it's not just about money. It's also about time, effort, and kind of your energy that goes into the whole thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
And there have been instances where the students have visited us, consulted us, came to us, and we have told them, no, I don't think that you're ready to go right now. Maybe later on, but not right now. Maybe you need to, put some work on your profile, on your resume, and then choose a university accordingly. Or maybe, stay in Pakistan, explore your options here, because we not only deal in international universities, we also cater to local, transnational, and again, international study options as well. I wanted to ask you that, what would be your advice to the parents who are kind of on the fence about sending their kid to a university abroad?
I think we often look at universities abroad as one like lump of universities. But the experience in each country is so different from the other. The opportunities, the culture, the way of living, that if you've decided that, okay, maybe the UK and US is not something we can afford, there are plenty of options in the Middle East, in the Far East, in Southeast Asia. And I am a big proponent of staying in Pakistan for your undergrad.
Yeah,
we have fantastic universities in Pakistan, right? They, the kind of if you look at NUST, look at Air University, look at GIK on the STEM side, IBA, LUMS, so many other schools that are doing great work, but our students are. But it's that drawing room culture, right? Where parents feel the need to talk about, oh, हमारा बच्चा तो इधर जा रहा है और उधर जा रहा है. So that's, I think every family needs to figure out for themselves what is best. Sending abroad may not always be the right answer. A particular destination may not be for you.
Yeah.
As a family, are you thinking of, migrating? Do you want the kids to come back?
Yeah.
So all those things should factor into it, and we should not be swayed by, what the khala or the phuppi or the neighbors or the friends think.
Exactly.
But we should choose to do what's best for our child and our families.
No, I completely agree. Have you seen, such instances where the parents are purely sending their kids to abroad or, to different universities internationally just to have that validation, the social validation?
I think I've been lucky in that sense where I've dealt with motivated students, right? And many times, many of them are very realistic. They're like, Miss, if it's not a top tier US university, then I would rather stay here because it's not worth the investment.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's like, if I'm getting the same great access at, if you're looking at liberal arts, Habib University is a great option, right?
Exactly.
And if I'm not going to like the top 10 universities in the US, then why spend all that money when you can get the same kind of education right here?
Yeah.
So I think I've been lucky in that sense. But I'm well aware that there are plenty of people who just for the sake of being able to say that we are sending students abroad or sending our kids abroad, they would do that. But I think the market is maturing in the sense that where people are beginning to realize that it's not always
a good idea.
Which is where counselors, and I'm not going to say agents.
Agents, thank God.
That's different, and that's what sets agents and counselors apart.
Exactly.
Where the focus of a counselor or an advisor is the student, and not the university.
No, I mean, again, if I were to enlist the kind of agents that we have within the region, then I'm sure that I would find an agent on literally every corner of Karachi in every street.
Oh, absolutely.
And And again, I'm so glad that you mentioned the fact and talked about the fact that you oppose the idea of sending your kids to, for undergrad. Because we also do advocate for the same thing, that, again, what is it that you want to become? What is it that you want to do eventually? And if it resonates with, their end goal, then we advise them accordingly. Yeah. My next question to you would be, how do you think that we as counselors can equip students with such skills that they kind of know and they kind of have an idea of what do they want to do?
I think, by the time they come to us as counselors, a lot of the grooming has already been done.
Yeah.
And I think what we need is a whole society, or in most cases, like a whole school approach.
Yeah.
It needs to start much earlier if we are to instill better work ethics in students. Just being able to meet deadlines, having the writing skills to write good essays, identifying those whiz kids in maths who are going to make it to the national teams, who are inshallah going to make it to MIT. It needs to start in like 7th grade.
Yeah.
Right? Which is why there is more of a case for training teachers, in training, school management, in understanding what is it that universities and employers are looking for. And it cannot happen overnight or in the 2 years that they come to us.
Yeah.
Right? So it needs to be a whole school approach. There needs to be widespread awareness among parents and society as a whole that it's we keep sending our kids to tuitions as like a pill to fix things, right? But that will only take it so far.
Exactly. And tuition won't do the holistic development. I think it's always a mix and balance of 2 or 3 things. That is, the parents need to be equally involved, then comes tuitions as well to some extent, and then the counselors or teachers that are there in your institute. You mentioned that the students, they really need to have writing skills. And again, as we were talking about earlier, that we are hosting a Denko Career Boost in which we are going to, equip students with the skills that they need to have in order to flourish in the job market, and also kind of, that will help them deciding what do they want to do eventually. But I think this question might be controversial. Lekin, ChatGPT. AI, ChatGPT. Even though we are saying that the students really need to have the writing skills, but with the onset of AI and with how it has evolved over, I would say, last 2 to 3 years, how do you ensure that they still have the skills that they need to flourish? Or do you also encourage students to use ChatGPT? Because I think it's also a helpful tool to some extent.
I agree with you on that. And there is no way that you and I can stand up to the way technology is evolving. I think if we hold our students back from using AI or we sanction them for it, we're really putting them at a disadvantage. I remember there was a time when I was using Google Classroom. We were doing a trial run with Google Classroom in one of my classes, and one of my bosses walked past and she said, "What do you think you're doing? Kids are using phones and laptops in their classes. This is not okay." And look how far we've come now. And with COVID, it taught us that this is just how things are going to be. It's the same thing with AI. I think we need to equip our students about how to use it better. You use AI to generate ideas. Use AI to, help you set up your research.
Exactly.
But the tonality, but the essence of who you are will only come from your own writing. And that's where I think teachers play a great role.
Exactly.
Teachers have the power to inspire and I think some of the most important teachers in my schooling were my English teachers, right? Because in the English class we were free to imagine and do things we couldn't in other classes. And so instilling that love for reading and linked to that is writing. If we do that, like starting 6th, 7th grade onwards, by the time they come to write their college essays, we can equip them to use AI to their advantage while retaining that the tone that they own, the sort of retaining their own essence.
Exactly, their own identity.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's also what universities essentially look for as well. And they are very, very well aware of the fact that students are using AI, students are using ChatGPT, but they also kind of want to have, kind of extract their identity out of their personal statements, essays. And if you're talking about personal statements and essays, then do you help students brainstorm? How can they, write their essays and how to go about it, basically?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's one of the key ways around ensuring that pura ka pura essay ChatGPT se na nikla is that we regularly sit down with students and right from like brainstorming to the final draft. It's nice to have somebody hold their hand through it, right?
Yeah.
And not, many people will just be like, okay, why don't you just get somebody to write it for you? But admissions officers, they see thousands of applications, right?
True.
They can see through that, right? And do you really want something that is not reflective of who you are? But yeah, I think that coaching, that mentoring, that what do you mean by this sentence?
Yeah.
That's what really adds depth to a personal statement or an essay.
No, I mean, again, I keep on saying this, but I do agree to whatever that you are saying. And I second that as well, especially in the career boost that we're having. So we have dedicated days for AI, in which we are essentially going to teach students how can they use AI to their benefit and how can they actually earn from it as well.
Yeah.
Because there are people who are earning from AI.
Absolutely.
I mean, there are softwares where you can just put in a text and they can develop, or the software can give you some images and you can then convert those images to videos and actually have a YouTube channel and
absolutely.
So
we can't avoid it, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, some CAIE subjects that require coursework, they're not exact. They don't say do not use AI. They said we just need to see proof of how you used it.
Exactly.
And that, I think, is a big step towards schools and universities and everybody else also understanding that, as they say in Urdu, nakal ke liye bhi akal ki zarurat hoti hai. Right?
Yeah.
So if you just like put in, write me a personal statement for an application for accounting and finance.
Yeah.
And you send that without changing the pronouns or, somebody will notice it.
I don't think that there's anything that can be truer than that, because only yesterday I was checking out a cover letter. So that was a complete copy paste from AI and ChatGPT, and
you could tell immediately,
and I could tell,
right?
And that particular person, they didn't even bother to remove the the brackets. They just copied and pasted the whole thing. And that also kind of worries me a bit, because do you think that is kind of making the new generation, which we call as Gen Z and Gen X, lazy?
I think so.
Yeah.
They're definitely, or maybe we've just got, or we have now become that auntie who says aajkal ke bacche. But I think their skill set is definitely different from ours. But and if they are able to harness technology, they won't have to work as hard as we did.
True.
That said, it all still goes back to how much of themselves they're putting into it. That's just, there's no akal involved in what this kid did, right? And you need to be able to demonstrate skill and intelligence, even if you are using AI.
Okay, so Sundis, you are also a career counselor, right? That is your main niche.
Career and universities. Yeah, that's right.
So what trends are you seeing among Gen Z students when it comes to career choices and academic interests? What are they inclining towards, other than engineering and doctors?
So CS, computer science.
Okay.
I feel like over the past 5 years, that has by far been the most popular major that students have been applying for. Engineering and medicine are still doing very strong, but CS is definitely picking up. Because there's so much more now to do in CS, and it's still diverse enough for them to be able to change their field. So definitely I see CS as a strong one. In the humanities, we've history, literature, all of those are still they're there, but
Yeah.
particularly for where I am, STEM, CS as a part of STEM is still sort of the
And-
main area which
Okay.
you know children are choosing to build a future.
And what if I take, counseling advice on camera? I've done psychology. Do you think psychology has some future?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
With psychology, we think,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
this person will be a psychologist or a therapist. But we need psychologists in HR departments.
department.
We need psychologists to design spaces.
Yeah.
We need psychologists in organizations to design courses. We need psychologists as
Yeah.
counselors.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think psychology is one of those like basic degrees that can actually be applied across the whole spectrum of careers.
That is true.
If you go into product development, go into marketing, communications, PR,
It's all psychology because
It's all
at the end of
psychology,
the day, you
exactly.
are dealing with humans.
yeah,
So you need to kind of like be mindful of the fact that how do they function,
Yeah.
how do they think, what do they want, what are the market gaps. Again, Sundus, my next question to you would be, so all of the KGS students, they are always, or I would say mostly, aiming for, again, top tier universities, and at the same time they are aiming for good careers as well.
that's right.
So if someone who wants to work, let's say at the Wall Street Journal, what do you think that they need to do? What skills do they need to have? Or what is the first step that they need to take?
If they want to work for the Wall Street Journal, they need to have good writing skills.
Yeah. True.
It starts with that, and then you
Yeah.
start sort of building. Okay, it's like, okay, I want to write for them. I want to go into journalism, right?
Yeah.
Maybe what I need as my super curricular is to try and land an internship at Dawn,
Yeah.
right? And then maybe I need to look at a summer experience that many universities have. In fact, the New York Times has a summer school, and maybe if I can afford that, I need to do that. Maybe I need to take a more active role in my school's newspaper, right?
Yeah.
And so building your CV from now on towards that dream job. That said, personally, I'm not a fan of dream jobs.
Yeah.
I think our dreams keep changing.
Keep changing,
They
exactly.
keep changing, and they need to.
Yeah, and they also refine us to one particular
Yeah.
thing, and we need to keep ourselves open to multiple options. Yeah.
And you really want to do the same thing your whole
Exact-
life? No.
At least I don't. I don't know about others.
And with Gen Z, I think their
Yeah.
attention spans are way smaller than
Exactly.
ours, and
Yeah.
and they need, we have no choice but to adapt.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because even my husband, he usually makes fun of me in a way that, सुबह तुम कुछ और कहती हो, दिन को कुछ और कहती हो, रात को कुछ और कहती हो, कि सुबह कुछ और करना है, दिन को you want to do something else, and by the end of the day you want to do something else entirely. So there is, I don't know
So
if
that's what makes me interesting.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's indecisiveness or that's having too many options out there.
I think it's a sign of a highly creative mind.
But moving on, like as I mentioned, that there are now too many options out there, too many career options, too many choices, and the same goes for universities. So every university is branding themselves as to be the best university, and every university is essentially saying that come to us, we are offering you this, and every university is also kind of highlighting the factor that they are working on employability, they are working on sustainability, digital transformation, all of that. So while you're counseling a student, how do you help them identify which university to go for, and what is your what are the essential tips and tricks that you recommend them, or what is your advice to them?
So, like we sort of spoke about earlier, it's about finding the right fit,
Yeah.
right? One of the things is, obviously, if you are a competitive student, maybe look at rankings.
Yeah.
Okay? And I think sometimes what we ignore is subject rankings.
Yeah.
Right? Is this university good for what you want to study? Right? Or do you want to just go after the brand name? It's like, I want to be able to brag that I went to Cambridge. Doesn't matter what I study at Cambridge. So there's the ranking, there's the subject ranking, And for me personally, I think the financial part of it is the most important, right? Is there financial aid? And I think sometimes what we don't take into account is how much of the financial aid is scholarship and how much of it is a loan. You know, for how long do you want to be able to pay loans? Loans, karza na ho to behtar hai, right?
Yeah.
And then again, finding that cultural fit for yourself, right? I may be a huge fan of how education works in Hong Kong and living in Hong Kong, but that might not be for everyone.
Exactly.
You know? The food may not agree with you, or Hong Kong is just, just too busy for you. So, you need to think about these things. Do you want to be closer to your parents? So
exactly.
I think those 4 or 5 things are what should help you decide that what is the best university for you. For places like Ivy Leagues and Oxbridge, even for our most competitive students, they really need to think about, do I want to continue in this high pressure, super competitive situation for the next 4 to 5 years?
Yeah.
Is that what I want, or do I want to I want to take it easy for a little bit?
Yeah.
And most Pakistani students, I think, excel at university. Because they've been through so much rigor at school. Our schools are so strict, and we academically, our students are quite strong. That what do you want your university experience to be? Because in all honesty, the first year of university abroad is not easy, right? So you need to think about you need to think about flights. You need to think about, do your parents need a visa to come visit you, and how much will the ticket cost? So there's a lot that goes into it.
I mean, there are so many follow-up questions that are coming in my mind right now.
Please go ahead.
The first one would be, students do come to us, and and their parents as well, that we are willing to take this much loan, and we strongly and always discourage them against it.
Either,
that go to a local Pakistani university and avoid taking a loan, avoid taking student debts. Don't put that pressure on your kid and on your own self as well. Because I feel like at the end of the day, the kid, he actually feels that he has to kind of give back to their parents as well, in terms of not just in terms of money or financially supporting them, also
but
in terms
around for them.
Being around for them, and also kind of securing a good job, or just doing something in their career as well.
That's also our culture. We're close-knit families and societies.
Exactly. And when we talk about close-knit families and societies, that's also a trend that I'm seeing nowadays, that people are actually preferring Middle East and Dubai as well for their studies. We have a lot of students coming in who just want to go to to the Middle East so that they can be closer to their parents.
It's a it's a 2-hour flight. Visas are not as difficult.
Exactly. And you can come over for Eid. You can come over for
and there's a lot of cultural similarity.
Exactly.
Food is not an issue.
And then language. I think,
exactly.
There is no language barrier as compared to the European countries. But my question is that, is there a difference in the standard of education when it comes to
for the last couple of days, I've just been looking at the Times Higher Education and QS rankings. And there are now more Asian universities in the top 100 than ever before. Which tells you that there is a sort of shift happening, right? Excellence in higher education is no longer a monopoly of the West. It is, I think there are more Chinese universities in the top 50 than, increasingly, the numbers are increasing. And what's really interesting that has been happening over the past 20 years is American and British universities opening up campuses in locations like Dubai,
exactly,
like Malaysia, and that offers the same standard, but it's so much more affordable in a culture that is easier for us to adapt to. It's closer to home. But that said, if we strictly want to talk about what the quality of education is in different regions of the world, then I think the rankings are a good objective way to go about it. That said, I would again think about what the fit is for you. I went to Malaysia for my undergrad.
Really?
And
That's nice.
I couldn't be happier. And at us time pe hardly people used to go to Malaysia. And but did my nephews want to go to Malaysia? No. So it's a tough sell to the students to say, okay, consider all regions equally, because their friends are going somewhere, or again, that drawing room chatter of families and parents ke America jana hai, London jana hai.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you went to Malaysia for your undergrad. So do you have that emotional association with 7-Eleven?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because as a student, I think you probably used to go there and kind of like get snacks and stuff.
So the food scene in Malaysia is great, and food is really cheap. But yes, supermarket eating was one way to live on a student budget.
No, that is really nice. Again, Sundis, you mentioned that there are universities that are opening up their campuses in the Middle East as well, and I feel like there was this university, Middlesex University. I'm sure that you've heard of
it. In Dubai, right?
In Dubai, yeah. And they have a campus in the UK as well.
That's
and surprisingly, their Dubai campus is way better than the UK one.
Is that so?
Yeah, I was
know
actually
it's really
shocked.
Popular.
Yeah, it has like a gym and it has different clubs. I mean, I hope that this doesn't sound like endorsement, because they didn't pay for us and they didn't sponsor this or anything.
But maybe because they have a bigger sort of market here, or they've just done better here.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, the campus itself, I don't think I've seen a better campus than that in Dubai or in the UK. I mean, obviously US has better campuses when it comes to the campus life.
That's interesting.
But yeah, that was just my take on what you mentioned, that there are campuses and there are universities that are opening up their campuses in the Middle East as well.
Even Australian universities have campuses in
UAE
and Malaysia. Qatar has so many American universities.
Qatar, I think that's also an emerging destination for higher education.
I think Cornell has a campus there. Georgetown has a campus there.
Really?
It's and you get it at a fraction of the cost.
No way. So what is if you're aware of the cost, like what is the initial or the starting tuition
I think
fee?
you can easily say if Cornell is 100 rupees in the US, it's 50 in Qatar.
Oh, so it's almost half the price.
Yeah.
Okay. So lastly, if you had to give one line life motto to the students who are listening in, then what would be your advice to them?
One line. Wow. Okay. This is a lot of pressure. I'm going to say follow your heart.
Yeah.
And be true to who you are.
True.
But you need to supplement that. And I know I keep adding sentences to it. Follow your heart. Be true to who you are. And work hard towards being that person.
Yeah.
Right? So if you see yourself as someone or something in the next 5 years, stick to that plan. Make it happen for yourself.
Yeah.
But always remain true to yourself. Don't fall for what others think you should be.
No, thank you so much, Sundar, for being so candid and for taking out the time to do this podcast. I think we can't be more grateful.
No, and you were so much fun, Iman.
And you were so wonderful during the entire time. I didn't feel like I was actually doing a podcast. It just felt like a conversation between two counselors, I would say.
I know, like a heart to heart, right?
Yeah. And I wish you good luck. And I don't think that I wish you good luck. You are already doing really good for yourself.
I am grateful. Thank you.
So thank you so much.
Thank you, Iman.
Thank you.